Today's stitch tutorial, we're going to go over the lattice stitch. I used 4-weight yarn and an 8mm hook. You can see the pattern that it produces, and you can see why it's called the lattice stitch. And it is done in multiples of 2 or even numbers. So with that said, let's get to it. Alright, for this stitch, it is done in even number of multiples. I've already did a chain of 20 and pulled up the foundation row. So the first thing you're going to do is it is a 2-row repeat. You'll Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, so there's 1 and there's 2. Yarn over, pull your yarn. Now you're going to backtrack, and you're going to go into that very first one that you went through. Just it. Yarn over and pull up your loop. And then you're going to Tunisian simple stitch 2 together again. Yarn over and pull through the both. And then you got to go back into that very first one to pull up that loop again. Because when you're putting 2 together, when you're doing a simple stitch 2 together, you're losing a loop. Just like that. We went from 2 to 1. Now we got to get that loop back. So you got to go back into just the very first one and pull that loop back up. So we're staying at 2. And that's how they should be grouped. Now, the pattern will come out more when we get more onto this. So we're going to go Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, yarn over and pull up your loop, backtrack into that very first one, and pull up your loop. Again, Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, yarn over and pull through the 2, go back into that first one, yarn over and pull up that loop. Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, yarn over, pull it up, and go back into that first one. We're taking a loop off when we put 2 together. So we need to go back into that first one to get our loop back. And this is for this stitch pattern. For other stitches, you could yarn over to get that loop back, but not this pattern. So 2 together, pull through both, and then go back into that very first one and pull it up. 2 together, yarn over and pull it up, and then go back into that very first one. And you're going to just do your end stitch like we always do. The return pass is a standard return pass where you chain 1, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And you'll do that all the way down till you have 1 loop on your hook. And then we're about to start the second row of this repeat. Alright, for the second part of this repeat, you're going to just 1 simple stitch. Because now how are you going to be doing this? You see the gaps that we created. Well, we're going to want the inside of the gaps to be stitched together. So how we're going to do this is we're going to go through that one and then go through the gap on the other side. Yarn over and pull up that loop and then backtrack. And you can see what it's doing with this line. How it's making it a diagonal. We're going to do it again. Simple stitch 2 together. Come back and pull up that second loop. Same again. We're going to simple stitch 2 together, yarn over and pull up that loop, and then go back in to the very first one like we did in the row prior and pull up the loop. Simple stitch 2 together, then go back to the very first one and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together, and then go back in and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together, go back in and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together, go back in, pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together, go back in, pull up your loop, and then you're left with one left, so you'll simple stitch it. Because you started with a simple stitch here, you're going to end with a simple stitch here. And then end stitch as normal, return passes the standard return pass. So yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, and pull through 2, and repeat that process. Alright, so we got the first and second row of our 2-row repeat done. And it's going to start becoming more evident of how you're doing it. And you can see the gaps that are happening. So the first one, well, we have a gap here. So we're going to take our needle and go through two of them, simple stitch 2 together, and backtrack and pull up that other loop so we have it. And what we're doing is when we're going through these 2 with these gaps, pulling the gap closer together, and then when you backtrack is when you're creating that slant. And we're going to continue doing this. This is the first row of the 2-row repeat. We'll do one more together. And just simple stitch 2 together. Simple stitch 2 together. And go back into that first bar and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together. Go back through the first bar and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together. Go back through the bar and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together. Go back through your bar and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together. And then back through your bar, pull up your loop, and your end stitch. Now we're going to be doing the second row of the 2-row repeat. So go ahead and do your standard return pass. Alright, now we're on the second row of our 2-row repeat. So on the second part of the repeat, you got these 2 right here together, and then you have your gap. That's when you know you need to pull up your simple stitch for the second row. And then you can start simple stitching 2 together. And then backtracking and going right back into the first bar. Simple stitch 2 together. Backtrack, go into that first bar. We're going to finish this row off, and then I'm going to go do a few more rows off camera so you can see how it looks built up, and we'll come back and look at it. So let's finish this row, and it's simple stitch 2 together, backtrack, pull up that first bar, simple stitch 2 together, backtrack, pull up that first bar. And again, when you're pulling up your loops, they should be bunched up in groups of 2. And you can see the pattern that it's making. It is making a lattice pattern. So let's finish off this row. Simple stitch 2 together, pull up your loop, go back into the first one, and pull up your loop. Simple stitch 2 together. And then go back into that first one and pull up your loop. And then the very last one is a simple stitch. If you do a simple stitch in the beginning, you need to do a simple stitch at the end. That's how this pattern works. So it's a standard return pass. You yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, repeating that process until you only have that one loop left on your hook. I'm going to go ahead and head off camera and work up a few rows, and I will see y'all here in just a second. Alright, I'm pulling through the last few stitches right now. I'm going to show you how we're going to close this off. So to close it off, we're going to continue the stitch pattern to close it off, because you want the stitch pattern to go all the way through your project. So the very first stitch, because my last row is the first row. So you're going to just go through 2, pull it up, slip off, then go back through and pull it off and slip off. So that way you have the stitch still there and you have the pattern coming through and you're closing it off. That's how you're going to do it. Just do the stitch but before and just slip it off. That is it. So I'm going to finish this up and then we'll come up and look at it. Alright, so here is the lattice stitch. You can see the pattern that it creates, how it goes both ways. And this is what the back looks like. Looks a little bit more bumpier than most of the stitches, but it is a very drapey fabric, and it's very versatile. It doesn't have much give horizontal, not much vertical, but that is the lattice stitch. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give me a like and subscribe, and leave me a comment. I will chit chat with you. And as always, folks, keep stitching.